Hello and welcome to the show. Well, listen, you can see that we are in a different space. And yes, I'm enjoying this. And I just want to welcome you to the show. I want to thank you for being on the show with us. I always talk about what this word means for this year. And the word for this year is intentional. It's being intentional about everything. God has blessed us with so many gifts and talents, but we have to be intentional about how we're going to carry out the many things that God has installed and has given us. And when it comes to visions and all, you've got to think about that and be intentional about that. 2025 is about being intentional. Today's show this week, we have none other than Dr. Sherman Pyatt. I call him the doctor, y'all. But Sherman Pyatt, author of Standing in the Gap and so many other books. So I just want you to sit back, relax, and enjoy because it's coming up next.
The Cecil Williams South Carolina Civil Rights Museum is the Palmetto State's first and only museum. It honors a generation of people, black and white, throughout the state of South Carolina who deserve to be remembered for their unselfish commitments and sacrifices. Enjoy an immersive and entertaining virtual tour. For more information, visit www.cecilwilliams.com.
Hello, everybody. It's Finkley of The Michael Finkley Show, and you're watching Gold right now. Why? You're watching The Tammy Show. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to the show. Well, I forgot to mention that January the 15th, of course, we call it J15, was Alpha Kappa Alpha's founding. And yes, I have it on, and I wanted to wear it today and just tell my sorors Happy Founders Day and all of the other Greeks Happy Founders Day. It's been like that all of January. So what did I say? We have a great show planned for you. We have none other than a dear friend, lecturer, author, devoted father, loving husband, church brother. I mean, what else can I say? I'm going to let him tell you all about himself, but I want my friend, Sherman Pyatt, to come on out.
Hey. Greetings, Sister Tammy.
Greetings, my brother. How are you?
My sister, I am great. I am great. How about yourself?
I'm doing well. Listen, as we tell people, you started with me back in the day. So you're an OG. That's over 20 years ago.
Sister Tammy, we started when really cell phone really wasn't at its peak yet.
That's right. And we didn't have all this technology because we were in the studio.
That's
How about
right.
that?
That's right.
and listen, we're in our home studios today. And so that makes it even better. And I want to thank my sister, Marilyn Pyatt, for helping pull all of this together. And of course, Natalie Brock as well.
That's right. That's absolutely right.
Yeah. So Sherman, I know you, but when somebody comes up to you and they say, well, Sherman Pyatt, tell me, who are you? Who is Sherman Pyatt?
Right. Well, I guess, Tammy, when I look back over my academic career, professional career, really, I'm just a person who eventually fell in love with our low country history and culture, and ultimately was kind of guided towards that way. I don't know whether it was divine intervention or just that path that I was supposed to lead down. I grew up here locally in Charleston, proud graduate of Burke High School, went on to matriculated to Johnson C. Smith University, HBCU, and did my graduate work at Indiana University. Not knowing really what my path was going to be in regards to writing and things, but certainly always had an interest in research, particularly history, and then more focused on African-American history, and even more focused on the culture of this region. And so for the past 20 or so years or more, that's really what I've been kind of focused on. As you said, I've lived here after I got back pretty much for the majority of my time. And so I, walked the streets of Charleston, worked in, different places and different jobs and things, but still eventually found what my niche was in regards to how can I help to navigate things that are given to us, and how can I share that gift with others?
That's right. And when you talk about navigating, Sherman, what was that defining moment that you said you were going to start this career in writing?
Right. You know, actually, it's first started when I started out at the Citadel. At that time, was the first actually African American technically on the faculty there. So, what part of the thing of having an academia and being on the faculty, it's something called tenure. So you have, by the time you're hired, you have 5 years to produce basically scholarly work. So my whole mission then was beyond just doing some articles or things of that nature. I was going to proceed and do something just a little bit more beyond that. Of course, being the first African American, it was my responsibility personally that I felt that I needed to do more. So I was able to navigate and do my first book there. Now, prior to that, I really was exposed to writing and research in graduate school at Indiana University. When I worked as a graduate student for the Women's Studies Department and was a research assistant on a project that two professors was working on. I didn't know at the time that several years later that would help for me in my profession as I looked to matriculate and getting tenure. So that was really my first publication. Actually, was at the Citadel. It was a bibliography, annotated bibliography of Dr. Martin Luther King that I published in '86. And so from that point on, that thing of really doing research, documenting materials and things would come about. And as we talk about further in this discussion, the book titled Standing in the Gap is actually my first novel. All of the books prior to that were nonfiction. Everything was based on researching archives, libraries, pulling data together, empirical data, primary source, and putting it in a source book. And so all that would lead to eventually, after this will be my seventh book, but my first novel.
Wow, wow. And this is your first fictional novel.
That's correct.
That's
is correct.
Right. And so Sherman, that brings me back to talking about being an author.
Right.
Who is your favorite author and why?
I was first exposed in undergraduate school to James Baldwin. And then I also took a liking to W.B. Du Bois. A couple of other authors were Frantz Fanon and Chinua Achebe. Those writers were, because they had some various writers. Frantz Fanon wrote Wretched of the Earth, looking at Algeria. Chinua Achebe, African writer. And of course, we come back here to James Baldwin and we look at W.B. Du Bois. So that different style of writing, it's kind of captivated me. And usually back then, really that's all you had to do was you read books and someone will share a book with you. I will given actually a book by an author, Khalil Gibran, believe it or not, by a student when I was working at the college who was actually incarcerated, gotten out of prison, and was a veteran and spent years there. And he shared that book with me.
Wow.
So it's interesting sometimes that you meet people, they might suggest some readings to you. And so it was a kind of a diverse reading for me that I was really exposed to. But even then, Tammy, I can tell you, I never dreamed, just my first year at Smith or coming out of high school, that my ultimate goal was to write and record books. Never.
Wow. So that comes to my point. My next question, and it's funny you would say that, you would mention the word dream, because I wanted to ask you, what were you, when you were growing up, what was your biggest dream?
Right. My biggest dream, believe it or not, growing up in downtown Charleston, living around the corner from Merck School, one of my biggest dreams early was to play in Burke Band. At 6 years of age, my mother would allow me to walk to the corner and listen, because we lived just that close. And at 7 years of age, I would go out and just watch the band. That was my ultimate goal, to play in Burke Band, which ultimately I did, fortunately. And so that was a really a dream of mine. The second was actually to become the first person in my family to go to college and to graduate. That stuck
Mm.
out to me because there was a big deal just coming out of high school. But then I said that would be for the family, to someone to be the first one in the family to go to college. That was like, you became president of the United States,
Nice.
if that's
Yeah.
comparable back then,
Yes.
considering how our educational push and drive was. So that became really my second biggest dream to fulfill. And, by the grace of God, I was able to do that.
Yeah. Wow. And so let's go back to about creating,
Hmm.
being a creative writer.
Hmm.
It's different when you're writing nonfiction because you're doing all this research.
That's
But
right.
when you are being creative, and this
Right.
book is so phenomenal when
Right.
it talks about the family, the Rouse family, and
Hmm. Hmm.
we'll go into that.
Right.
But
Right.
what was it that you had to do to really
Hmm.
put your thought into being creative as you were thinking about standing in the gap?
Right. Well, Tammy, what's interesting, you would ask that because when I had thought back about it, it came to me that growing up, I spent several summers on Wadmalaw Island. And that's because really that's where my grandmother came from, Wadmalaw Island, around 1915, something along that line. And that's the reason why I put the dates around that time. So that was always kind of a part of me. The second was the fact that as I was doing, research and also looking at some of the things you will find in the book about superstitions and things, I lived that. I
Mm.
heard stories from my grandmother and older women when we were children in our neighborhood. That was our entertainment. And summer nights, they would tell us stories that would just scare the heebie-jeebies out of you. But every other night, we were back for more. It was just something fascinating. And the other thing was sometimes the stories they told us, we had to decipher whether was this an actual story. Some they would say it came to them in a dream. Some was actuality. So now you have this situation. Years and years and years later, a friend of mine will call and say, "Hey, you remember when your grandmother told us this story about so and so?" Now, the guy who called me, he is probably 73, 74, but he remembers when he was 10 or 11, a
Mhm.
story or stories then. And what also was captivating is the fact that he says he tells his grandkids about them. He's told his children. I find myself as well having told my sons about them, so much so that they say, okay, yeah. Or they would call me and said, hey, what does it mean when you said you hit your elbow? Or something along the line. Okay, so you know what? So Tam, you know what I'm talking about. But it's just that thing that, and I would wake up sometimes with this book, having thoughts, having dreams,
Mhm.
and reflecting back on my childhood and growing up, and thinking about those things. The other thing that really kind of prompted me is the fact that right now we have a Gullah Geechee corridor. I
Yes, yes.
served as a commissioner on one
Commissioner.
of them, and still today we're still trying to recapture those days and that culture, that what it is. Then I realized that I lived that culture many, many years ago, not realizing how important it was. And so when we come full forth with this, the creativity of this is that if you and I are talking, Tammy, you might say to me, I saw today on the way to work that, a dog was hit by a car. And then I can take that same and then craft something out of that
Mhm.
to come with a story. My sons used to always say to me, I would tell them things and they would say, okay, daddy, is this a story now or this true? Because I would say, when I went to school, I had to walk 10 miles and it was snow. My son would remind me, Daddy, you grew up right around the corner from the school that had snow in Charleston. So I had that ability just to craft and to tell stories. And
Right.
so part of it was a kind of a transition. But I will tell you the truth, Tammy, when I was writing this book, I was going through some health issues and really
Mm.
feeling kind of down. And that's why the book was pushed back. I found myself being so engrossed with these fictional people, by the way,
Mhm.
that when I was writing something about something is about to happen, I became emotional. It was almost as though I became attached to these fictional people, that they were real, that Mary, Jacob, Anna, that they existed, but they only existed in my mind, but they existed in Charleston and these streets and things. And that was the part that I couldn't separate. Like you said, for me, when I was doing these nonfiction books, getting data and things, there's no attachment to data and words. But when you put down on paper a mother, a son, a brother, and they go through life's ups and downs, and they're sick, they die, they eat, they're happy, it touches you.
Yes,
and I have to keep reminding myself, you're getting upset or you're getting ready to get emotional of somebody you invented in your mind. What is wrong with you? So I chuckle now, but I have to just pull myself back and think, do I really want to do this to this character? But I also realize that in life itself, it's not always rosy and peachy.
That's
From
right.
the time there, from any day and time, things happen unexpectedly, some good, some bad.
That's right. Well, we're going to take a break, Sherman, because when we come back, I want to kind of delve more into standing in the gap, talk about the Gullah Geechee culture. And so we're going to take a break, and we'll be right back. Folks, don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
The Orangeburg County Conference Center supports downtown Orangeburg and our surrounding communities. The 6,000 plus square foot space is ideal for groups of up to 400 people attending corporate meetings, conventions, workshops, and special events. Conference Center staff are inspired to ensure that everyone can enjoy the modern amenities. State-of-the-art ballroom that accommodates up to 400 guests banquet style and 430 guests theater style. A warming kitchen with hot boxes, ice machine, refrigerator, freezer, and counter space. A lobby that accommodates 150 guests with special events outdoors. The comfortable outdoor amphitheater has a video wall and seating. Adjacent to the amphitheater is 12,000 plus square feet of green space that extends events outside, plus complimentary on-site event parking and additional parking across the street. Your event can take place all in one spectacular location. We welcome your special event in Orangeburg.
Hey, you're watching The Tammy Show. And remember to keep it cool with me, AC.
Welcome back to the show. I don't know if you're just joining us. I have the one and only Sherman Pyatt, lecturer, author of Standing in the Gap. And so we were just talking, and Sherman, some of the things that you were talking about, those folk tales. And I'm going to share one that my mother did not believe, because she's from Charlotte, North Carolina. You went to Smith. My daughter went to Smith. Daddy went to Smith. And when I was pregnant with Catherine, I had gas. I was belching all the time. And one of the older ladies from James Island had said, a friend of my girlfriend's and her husband, and she said, "Oh, that girl, that baby, they gonna have a lot of hair in his head, because that child can't stop belching." And I went home. I said, "Mom, guess what?" And, mother being the person that she is, I've never heard of anything like that. Well, guess what happened? When the baby came out, Catherine had a head full of hair, and all she did, she said, "Oh no, look at that. I thought something was wrong with the baby, right? She's helping deliver the baby." So I'm thinking something's wrong with her. Long story made short, she said, "Oh, she has all this hair." So like you said, some of those folk tales are true.
Correct. And but it also evolves, Tammy, and I kind of stressed throughout when I was doing prior to this book, I did a dictionary of African American folk life of the South, going around doing research with folks from several states. But what I concluded was that it also is your belief system. If you believe that, one who is belching and things along that line, and that child is going to have a hair full of head, that is your belief. Nobody's going to convince you no differently. I almost equate that to saying that if you believe in the Lord Jesus Christ, there's nothing anybody out there can say to you to convince you otherwise. That's so, right. Like you said, in the book that you speak of, one instant, and I don't want to give away too much before people read the book, but there's an instant in there, very first chapter. Charlotte is having a baby. Your mother, who was obstetrician, delivered babies. Here comes Miss Ella May. She is the midwife. Mm-hmm. No medical degree, no medical training, but she has delivered babies on Wadmalaw and several islands, just like that. Now, one of the procedures that she talked about in the first chapter of the book, she instructs Jacob, the boy, go outside to the woodshed and bring in that sharp handle axe. He wonders, why am I going outside to get an axe? She places the axe under the bed. And then, but I'm not going to say any more beyond that, because I want people to think, what did that axe have to do with someone's getting ready to deliver a baby? I'm saying that to you to say it because that actually happened, according to my mother, to me. When she was delivering me, I was delivered by a midwife. That same thing was told to her. It said my grandmother said to my aunt, get me a sharp knife and place it under the bed. Mm. So I took what I'm telling you again, what I had lived and heard, and that becomes a part of this book, Standing in the Gap. So part is actually of experience, part of actually of things that come to me to expand on. And so it's a combination of that. And part came from the book that I did back in 99 on the dictionary that I said, how can I take, and this one, Tammy, I'm glad you're sitting down. How can I take the concept of the hag? Okay. Oh, no. All right. And now put it, but give this hag a name and a person and put it in this book. Wow. So now those who have never been exposed to the hag that you and I have and know about, they will see what I'm talking about.
That's right.
You see? Yeah. Let me tell you something. So, and again, I don't want to give away too much, but they will be exposed to the hag in this book. Okay. Tammy, I think another consequence that you might have relate to, particularly Black women, and I used to talk about this in my lectures, it was always careful for Black women to be careful with their hair when they comb their hair. If they take hair out of that comb, they're going to do one of two things. They're going to burn it or flush it in the toilet. Again, this appears in the book, and there's a person, and there are people evolving around this. And so I'll let that stay just as it is.
That's right.
People who know about it, when they read about it, and they bring it back to them. Those who never read about it, they're going to think, oh, no. But see, this is our belief system. Mm-hmm. We believe why we do certain things. You can't shake my belief.
Okay? That's right. That's right.
My belief. And so the book kind of comes to this. What I do, it might be different. It's not necessarily wrong. So what you see in the Gala culture that might go on is the fact that it's just different. It is not necessarily wrong. On those sea islands, from the time they were brought here to the time to right now, we have done certain things, ate certain foods, believe in certain things that have carried us from then to now. So don't try to break my what I do. Just try to understand that it is different from yours.
That's right.
It comes that whole concept of a problem with people in general trying to impart your ways on mine, as though I've been here almost 400 years and all of a sudden now what I have been doing is wrong. Mm-hmm. And so you got something better for me to do to make my life better. Not necessarily true.
That's right. You know, Sherman, as we are talking about the different folk tales and the different belief systems that we grew
Hmm.
up with and the things that we were told as children, because, you know,
Hmm.
Arsenio is 102 years old. And so
That's right.
I remember all the stories that she told me, as well as what my father told me.
That's
When
right.
we think about those stories, we
Hmm.
talk about the Gullah Geechee culture.
Right.
Having been the commissioner of
Right.
the Gullah Geechee culture corridor,
Right.
talk about what Gullah Geechee means, because
Okay.
everybody says to me, "What's a Gullah Geechee?" You always talk about Gullah Geechee.
Right. 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 Okay. In a nutshell, I think the best definition you can give is that Gullah Geechee, or Gullah, if you want to call them the Gullah people, are a group of people brought from West Africa, particularly along the Rice Coast, settled along the Sea Islands. And the Sea Islands, technically, from the corridor, the Gullah corridor, extends, Tammy, from Wilmington, North Carolina, down to St. Augustine, Florida,
Hmm.
32 miles inward. So you are not considered Gullah if you're from Orangeburg, believe
That's
it or
right.
not. You
That's
can go
right.
along, so it has to be along that coast. Now, the other distinctiveness with the Gullah culture is the fact that the Gullah language is the only Creole language in the United States that has, and the Creole comes about two bases: English words and African words. Now, you might find in New Orleans, they have a combination of English, French, some might be a little Portuguese, but the Gullah culture, the Gullah language, has two languages: African words and English words. There's no other language beyond that that can boast those things, because the African slave trade brought Portuguese, French, German, and you would have those combination. Here for us, the distinctiveness is that. And just to show you a point, if you were to go to West Africa, let's say Sierra Leone right now, there is a language there called Creole, spelled Krio. Now, Creole is a language similar to Gullah, but there are 7 languages in Sierra Leone by itself. So in order for people who speak different languages from the tribes, they speak Creole, and it sounds similar. And because again, that's the region that we came from. You have a connection there to show the foodways. Jollof rice there is the
Mm-hmm.
same as our red rice here.
Mm-hmm.
Sweetgrass baskets, they were made similar, and they were the whole cultural thing was brought here. The other thing was the isolation that we had prior to, and I did this for this particular reason. The book is done in dialect, by the way, and it has a Gullah culture and it has a glossary. But what happened prior to 1926? There was no bridge access to the Sea Islands. So anytime the islanders would come here, it was always by boat. Some people lived on those Sea Islands and never stepped foot in Charleston at all. They lived and they died right there on those Sea Islands. Why would they need to come here? They had everything they needed. They ate off the land, they had the fish, they had the sea, they can build their own houses, and they were a community. So the more you find with a group of people being isolated, the more they're more likely to retain their culture. So the Gullah Geechee people have that distinction. I would like to think that the Gullah Geechee culture is a subculture within the Black culture,
Mm-hmm.
because one speaks about the Black culture, but when you really get down to it, there's no other distinct culture like ours that can show a direct correlation or link to West Africa. I'm specifically saying West Africa, those countries running along what was called the Windward Coast or the Rice Coast. Many of us were brought here because of our knowledge of cultivating rice. And that becomes the whole sticking point and for in regards to the Gullah culture. Now, Gullah and Geechee has been used throughout many, many years. Anthropologists have found and have determined basically Geechee and Gullah. There are two tribes in parts of Sierra Leone and Ghana, the Kizi tribe and the Gola tribe. What many were kind of determining now is that those people being brought from those regions would have referred to themselves as, I'm from the Gola tribe. You might have been from the Kizi tribe.
Mm-hmm.
So over the years and over the century, they're saying that those words will become Gola becomes Gullah, Kizzy becomes Geechee. Over the years, it is transferred. Now, this is from an anthropological point of view.
Wow.
Others might say it was the Ogeechee River, but okay, if that's the case, where did Ogeechee River come from?
Yeah.
So I'm more inclined to go with anthropologists as far as from a scholarly point of view as to
Yes.
the origin of the word Gullah and Geechee.
Wow. Sherman, it is always so great to have you on the show because I learned so much. You learn something new every day.
Right,
But
right.
when I talk with you, I'm learning a different side of you, which is this standing in the gap. And I
Right.
know that it's phenomenal. So what is it that you want viewers and the readers to glean
Okay.
from your book?
Okay. Number one, I think, Tammy, if you look at just the title, Standing in the Gap, that title, I played around with it for quite some time. And if we look back biblically, standing in the gap is actually, it's biblical. I think it's from Ezekiel 22:23, where we stand in the gap or intercession to pray for one another when they're in need.
That's
But
right.
for the Black community, standing in the gap carries something even more beyond that. We know that because of conditions coming up, if I knew you were in need and I had something that I can give, I had some extra fish, maybe I caught, or shrimp. I'm going to say, Sister Tammy, I got some extra shrimp. I'm going to give it to you because you didn't ask me for it. But you know what? Because 6 months earlier, you gave me those sweet potatoes and things. So we stand in the gap because you never know when your time is going to come.
That's right.
So, and this is what the mother in the book, the matriarch, preached to her kids, because the father who had passed along preached about looking out for one another, standing in the gap, always being conscious of your conditions, but others as well. The other thing I wanted to make sure that people realize is that Jacob, the boy in the book, looks at his growth from a young boy to the maturation of a young man. Many of the books that are written today, and I have, no problems with it, even women authors, they're going to write about women. They're going to write about girls. Not too many Black men, really write books that talks about the uplifting and the positiveness of Black men. Mm-hmm. So throughout this book, you will see that Black men are central within their families. They're central within their communities, and they are looking at as being there for their family. Big Leon, who is the patriarch of that family, died 6 months before the book. He's not alive in the book except for one page, but his words resonate for years and years, where the wife, the children always talk about, well, Daddy used to say, and Daddy would do. So that he had that moral grip on that family about what was right, what was wrong. And so I wanted to show in a kind of an underlying way that the presence of Black men within the Black family, within the Black community, not having a whole lot of money, but certainly having morals about what is right, what is wrong, and how do you navigate and be strong as a man to navigate and do what is right. And so the other thing is, like I said, and kind of in this closing area, is that to show in another form of way the beauty of the Gullah culture, the strong essence of it from where it started to where it is today, and where is it going. That we don't need to be ashamed, as you and I might have known back in the day, to be called Geechee was an insult, So, but today, my son even called himself Geechee Sean. I mean, he got that as his email address and things. So today, and I'm happy for that, to see that we were unique. There was nothing, different about us that, we should have our head held down. We were unique. That's and so when people sometimes don't understand things that are different and unique, they put it down. They make it sound as though that, well, you're not like me, so something must be wrong with you.
That's right.
That is not true.
Yeah.
And so that itself, standing in the gap is just a kind of a call to us to remember from days gone by that, it's still not a bad thing to stand in the gap right now. For Sister Tammy, if Sister Tammy can stand in the gap for me, if it's just in prayer, or look, if Sister Tammy, if I ain't seen you in a while, just to say, Sister, I was thinking about you. That in itself carries that whole mantra in the African American community. And it really started on those sea islands when people were isolated and all they had were each others who lived in those various houses.
That's right. And you know, at present day now, we're going to be standing in the gap for each other.
Yes,
Because
ma'am.
I just talked about that. I said, you know, if you don't have any eggs and I have
That's
some
right.
eggs, we're going to split this. We're going to
That's
split this
absolutely.
dozen up
That's
because
right.
times are going to be in
A-
present day where we're going
Absolutely.
to have to be standing in the gap for each other. You know,
Absolutely.
Sherman, as we close out, I want to ask you, what's next for you? You have
Okay.
standing in the gap. I know the
Yeah.
event is coming up.
Right.
What's next?
Okay. As far as just in the immediate future, or
In the immediate future.
okay. Well, I hope with this, I have certainly, and I hope you'll be able to attend. I have my book launch on February the 4th at the Charleston Library Society, and so we will be hosting the book launch of
Yes.
this book. Then, and I'm scheduled for a couple of book talks. I will actually have a book talk at the Dart Hall Library on March the 13th, and that will be taking place. I will be looking beyond. I have actually another project that I'm going to focus on while God has given me the strength to continue on. And it's still almost in the field of Gullah culture, but it goes back on a historical fact that took place around 1750.
Wow.
Again, my focus is going to be on a Black man instead of a Black boy this time. Yes.
Wonderful, wonderful. And so I'm going to close out with, what are 3 words that describe Sherman? You know, I always ask my guests that.
Okay. I would hope to think that I am, humble, certainly blessed, and certainly, I guess, aware. And I use aware, and I say that, and looking at my surroundings constantly, and knowing if you're aware that you're going to try to do something about it, that's going to lead to positivity.
Yeah. Wow, Sherman Pyatt. It was so wonderful having you on the show. Many blessings to you on standing in the gap and all your future endeavors. I tell you what, if there's anything I can do, you know I'm always standing in the gap for you. If
Sister
there's
Tammy,
anything.
you always have been, and I know you will continue to, and it has been an honor to be on your show, and I would be happy to come back at any time you would have me, and much continued success to you and your endeavors.
Thank you so very much. Many blessings to you, and I thank you. And this was wonderful. I can't read the book. I cannot wait to read it. So listen, many blessings to you. And you can get in touch with Sherman by going to his email and also his telephone. And that's ShermanPyatt3@gmail. And then his telephone number is 843-693-1390. And of course, his Facebook page, Emma Cast Iron Skillet. Yes, all right, Miss Emma's Cast Iron Skillet. So, Sherman, they can get in touch with you there. And again, I want to thank you. And if there's anything that we can do here for you on this show, please let us know. And many blessings.
Thank you, Sister Tammy.
All right. Take care.
Bye-bye. Right.
Bye-bye. Listen, you heard it right here. That is Sherman Pyatt, dear friend in Maryland. I tell you, I love them and all that he is doing. I tell you, this is exciting now. This is exciting, standing in the gap between heaven and earth, but it's just standing in the gap for each other. And we got to remember that. So again, thank you so much, Sherman, for being on the show. I also want to thank my producer, associate producer, Willie, because next week we're going to have a special guest. But I tell you what, next week, the special guest is going to be me. You're going to talk with Tammy again. And so I'm looking forward to that. So if you have questions, you can always send them to info@TammyMcCaughtry.com. And so I look forward to that on my Facebook page, IG page. Hit me up. Let me know what you're thinking. Please remember to subscribe to the Tammy TV show. All you have to do is hit that red subscribe button, and it will notify you as to when the show is coming on. Please, let's be a blessing to somebody today and every day. Thank you again for joining me. And thank you again, Sherman. Thank you, everybody. Until the next time, take care of yourself. Bye-bye.